All right, thank you all so much, and thank you all so much for coming. I am so pleased to welcome you all to the final presentation of FutureCity in Springfield, a program of FutureCity, Massachusetts, graciously brought to us by the Mass Cultural Council. As some of you may know or may not know, we've had 2 day-long workshops to lead up to this presentation, and we're going to get to see a little bit of the suggestions of quick, easy wins for incorporating arts into economic development in downtown Springfield. And I'm very happy to host it in this space, and I thank Evan for lending the space to us because I think it's a perfect example of how arts can advance a commercial building. So now let's talk about how we can use the arts to solve other problems in Springfield. And it's my pleasure to introduce our mayor of Springfield, the people's mayor, and a champion for the arts, Dominic Sarno.
Thank you. Thanks, Morgan. Thanks, Morgan. Let's give Morgan a big round of applause. To Mr. Tim Jones, Mark Davies not here, but I understand from the always stylish Anita Walker that Tim Jones is the brains behind this. Am I correct? So we appreciate that you hopped over the pond to come to the United States of America. So let's give him a warm welcome. And of course, to the incomparable Anita Walker, who's always, you brought your cheering section, okay. Groupies, we like that. To Evan Plotkin, who's a dear friend, and I call him the Renaissance man, always tying in arts and culture and economic development and vitality. I deeply appreciate it. One quick story before I finish up quickly. Evan, we did a press conference here some years ago. I forgot what the announcement was. And there was a beautiful painting. Victorian age, Romanesque, and gorgeous. But it was a nude painting of a young lady. And I remember we had the podium was set up right in front of, remember that? Right in front of this painting. And we're just about to do a press conference when somebody said, not a good idea. The focus will not be on the message. I never forgot that. We had a big laugh on that. But I really want to thank, to have a thriving city or urban center, arts and culture are very, very important. And to tie in this extremely creative project that to our business people, letting them know that you can make something on your bottom line. And it makes it welcoming. And I'm going to continue to play on this phenomenon that's occurring in urban America with empty nesters, baby boomers, and young professionals that want to come back or stay in their core city, downsize, as long as you keep it clean, safe, eclectic, exciting, and entertainment and creative. And this fits right in, so when Anita Walker brought it to my attention, and I appreciate Scott Hansen and my team and Brian Connors, so why not? You know, everybody's always said, well, what do you expect at Springfield? We're changing that. Delta now. It's why not Springfield? So I think this creativity and is going to continue to liven up the city. To the business owners, it's going to help you make money on your bottom line. And it's just good overall for the morale boost of the city of Springfield. So I'm deeply appreciative of Mr. Tim Jones being here and, of course, Anita Walker. And from that, we'll go from there. And I guess I will turn it back to the mistress of ceremonies, Morgan. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And thanks for the coffee.
I guess it is now my pleasure to introduce the head of the Mass Cultural Council, the always lovely and graceful Anita Walker.
Such pressure. I'll just try not to fall down while I'm standing up here now. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you very much for turning out today, and thank you so much for all the hard work and good hard thinking you've been putting into the future of Springfield. Today, we're going to cast a play. You're all in the play, and you are all going to shed your usual roles. So those of you who are in the cultural sector are cultural people, set that aside a minute. Those of you who are in real estate or development, set that aside for a minute. Those of you who work in government, who are planners, set that aside for a minute. Business people, set aside your normal suit and your usual clothes, because today we are all city makers. Equally, all city makers. So, cultural people, you usually think your contribution to the city is to add arts and culture. But you know what you do? You add economic value. You add profitability. Those of you who are in the business side of the world, real estate, development, running a business, you see your role as economic impact. You're culture makers. You provide cultural assets to the community. And those of you who are in government see yourselves as shapers and regulators, but you're also cultural leaders and cultural contributors. So we're all the same today. We're all city makers. And I say that because one of the things that has been such a powerful revelation for me and for us at the Mass Cultural Council since we started a year ago to work with Future City is the way that it has recast our identities of ourselves and the way we navigate and the way we work in cities. For the first time in this room, in Boston and in Worcester, our 3 demonstration projects, we are seeing, sitting at the table, side by side, in the same status, the developers, the culture makers, and city leaders. And we have never assembled these 3 groups of people in a room before to talk together and to shape cities together before. And seriously, that's the last chapter of the book as far as I'm concerned, because that is a powerful collaboration that really is making a difference. Monday night in Boston, we had a dinner with 5 of the biggest developers in the city of Boston sitting at the dinner table with 5 of the largest cultural organizations sitting at the dinner table with the mayor's office. This has never happened before in the city of Boston. And literally, without us saying anything, all of a sudden, ideas, projects, collaborations erupted in the room. That is what's happening here, and that's what's going to be happening in Worcester, where we're going to be heading off later today. You've done a lot of work coming up to this. Drew, thank you very much for your leadership. And none of this would happen without the mayor leading in and empowering the community and having the vision to say, this is what we want to happen in Springfield. So it takes everybody leaning in and holding hands on this to make something happen. But then we're all creative people. Everybody in this room is a creative city maker. Today what you're going to be doing is working with Tim Jones, and he wants me to stop saying this, but I'll say this instead. He's the chief strategist for Future City, and okay, that's true. I keep calling him the brains of the outfit. But he and Mark work very, very closely together on all of the projects. There was a little bit of an arm wrestling match in our office to see who was going to have the chance to come out here with us today. And I will tell you that Tim fell in love with Worcester and Springfield the last time that he took the 2 trips. Just a few weeks ago, it feels like. Last month. Because there is something I have to say about Springfield and Worcester that has an advantage even to Boston, and that is the way that you already have a natural ability and a natural practice of working together. I think that collaboration, a little less competitiveness, I mean, there is sort of a little more natural environment here to get things done, and I think that's probably why Tim liked coming out here better than any place. So today we're going to spend a little bit of time doing a little more work, but I want to really just say congratulations. The work you're going to be doing today is taking a look at Tim's presentation, sort of where he has refined the conversations you had the last time, the workshop that you had the last time he was out here. And he actually is going to be putting it side by side with Worcester, because it's nice to sort of kind of bounce back and forth and see what the similarities are, what you can learn from each other. And in fact, Drew's going to be coming with us when we go out to Worcester. So part of that is sort of the collaboration and learning from each other. So that's part of what's going to be happening today when you see this presentation. And in the final analysis, Tim's going to be doing a lot of listening. And he will be providing you with a final report. So there's still some editing and revising that is possible in the conversation today. So do know that that's going to be happening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anita. Thank you for the introductions, and thanks for having us back. I want to get rid of the microphone. I'm wondering if that's possible. No, it's not possible? Okay, so I'll use the microphone. The first thing I want to say is a huge thank you to people coming today. It's, as we've just heard, there's a really kind of powerful coalition of people in the room, and it's really great. And I think our experience at FutureCity is when we're able to get folks together like this to look at urban places through a kind of really cross-sectoral approach that brings together property, that brings together culture, that brings together city planning. Amazing transformational things can happen, often really, really quickly and really powerfully in ways that wouldn't otherwise happen if people stay in their boxes. So I'd really like to just reiterate the thanks to you guys for coming today, and also for the people who I met last month. We had a great day together, which I'll briefly summarise for the benefit of people who weren't here. We had a great day last month where we were doing some pretty wacky stuff. We were creating new maps of Springfield. We were looking at what the kind of key drivers or themes for the redevelopment of the downtown should all be about. And what I was really blown away by was just the kind of the speed, the inventiveness, that sort of sense of collective effort that's here that I think you guys can really build upon. When Anita was just talking about how Springfield might be a contrast with Boston, it's something that is very, very palpable to us, because a lot of the work that FutureCity does in London and Sydney and other places around the world is often in kind of very large established city contexts where there's a big set of kind of political players. There's a sort of sense of inertia. It takes a kind of long while to wrangle the formulas together to really make exciting new stuff happen. Whereas here it feels to us like there's a kind of really clean and clear space to get on with and do some really exciting stuff that would make a real difference to the Springfield downtown experience. So I'm just going to talk through relatively quickly what's in this set of slides, which is a kind of distillation of the report that's going to come out later this month, which essentially is going to take the Springfield and Worcester demonstrators and put them together into the same report and offer them out to you guys. It's when we did the workshop last month, I suggested to people that what we were kind of trying to doing was to invent a new, powerful promotional brochure for the downtown of Springfield. And so whilst this isn't exactly a kind of super shiny brochure per se, I think hopefully as we go through it, people can see that sort of the bones and the outlines of the ideas are in here that can be built upon. When I finally shut up, which won't take too long, it's the rest of the conversation this morning is really about kind of handing over the conversation to you guys and asking ourselves, okay, so if we are kind of bought into this idea and way of working, what are the tangible, immediate, quick win projects that people can see? What are the low-hanging fruit here for Springfield, and what does it take? What do we need to do to put them together? Because I think in our experience, certainly as head of strategy at FutureCity, the last thing I wanted to do when I joined the company was just kind of oversee the issue of documents that would go out and sit on shelves and be kind of procedural, but ultimately make no impact on the ground whatsoever. And I'm really, really fortunate to be in a company where we translate these ideas into actual projects very, very quickly. So there's kind of two sides to the FutureCity experience. One is the strategy side, which we're leaning on today, but the other side, if you look at our website, you'll see example after example of very powerful urban art projects, public art projects, placemaking, community development projects. And I think the fact that we're able to show that these strategies lead to real things that are making a real difference really quickly and are kind of highly original and inventive according to the place where they're created is a great kind of confidence builder in this as a way of working. So I'd like, within the space of today's conversation, to move from the kind of reminder for those who've seen it before and an understanding for those who haven't of the strategy framework that we've developed thus far. And then the second half of the conversation, let's talk about the what next. What can we make happen here? What does it take to make the stuff happen? And then who's in the club? effectively, is where we need to get to. If this is if we are in agreement that there's a powerful enough group of people gathered here, what is the sort of structure that you guys can agree on for Springfield to take this work forward and to begin to really kind of consolidate this as a way of working? Does that make sense? Yeah, it was also a very long sentence, sorry about that. So without further ado, just a kind of quick reminder for those who might not have familiarised themselves with it about where we're coming from. So FutureCity describes ourselves as cultural placemakers. If you work in the urban design professions anywhere in the world at the moment, it's littered with people who call themselves placemakers. Architects are calling themselves placemakers, developers are calling themselves placemakers, landscape architects and so on. And that kind of something switched maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, I think, where people realized that it was much more powerful to explain themselves to the world if you work in urban development as people who make great places happen. We come at it from the point of view of culture, broadly defined, not formal culture necessarily, though it can and should be that, but not just museums, galleries, theatres, etc., but also everything else that culture can mean to people. So everything from green spaces, public realm, technology, small business, and so on and so forth. Essentially, this idea of kind of taking culture and put it into places where up until now it hasn't felt like it should belong, and using it as a catalyst to make new things happen. So this idea of culture as a kind of core element that can make urban places great, that gives each place a unique narrative, and that, to be completely candid, will stop the thing that would otherwise happen when people stay in their own boxes, whereby a developer who sees a kind of great commercial opportunity in a place might come in and think, well, I need to do something to kind of foster some sort of vibrancy around what I'm doing. Because I'm not connected to the culture people or the kind of cultural energies of this place directly, I'll commission something and hope that that plays well and makes sense. And often, in our experience, those things don't necessarily join up with what's already there. When I was here last month, I met a really powerful group of people with some great ideas and much more knowledge than FutureCity is ever going to have about what Springfield's unique cultural DNA is all about. And I think it's that thing we want to surface and think about it in a really kind of active way as a kind of powerful tool that can be used to connect culture, property, city planning, and give Springfield a set of kind of narrative drivers and a framework that everybody can work within. So that's essentially how we explain what we do. It's kind of long-winded because it's kind of an emergent practice, really, and it's not yet a kind of conventional thing. But we see more and more appetite amongst the property sector, who are the majority of our clients, for working in this way. And we see more and more cultural organisations really jumping on the opportunity to work in cross-economy ways. Very briefly, what we've done as part of the demonstrator. So Mark, my colleague and boss, came over here in July and ran a workshop, big maps on the walls, stickers out, conversations about how to understand how people currently see the kind of the locations of culture in Springfield and what the narrative is in Springfield. We then went back into our London office. We have a mixed team of British and American staff who work in my unit to really kind of take back what Mark got from those initial workshops and put it into our kind of big research machine. We did loads and loads of web research. We had lots of conversations with the MCC, and some of that went across to the Cultural District as well, to try and understand exactly what Springfield is all about. It's quite weird in the sense as a demonstrator where they're kind of thinking, well, this probably seems like it could be a good idea for Springfield, but we're on the other side of the planet and maybe it doesn't mean anything. So there was a lot of kind of to and froing, but essentially from that we kind of pulled out, okay, so what are the kind of key points about the city as a whole? What are the kind of drivers? What are the things to do with its heritage? What are the things to do with its business commercial position? How does it explain itself in terms of its tourist offer? All of that kind of big picture stuff. And then we looked specifically at the downtown and how that can fit into it. We did a kind of mapping and analysis of where the creative and cultural industries currently sit. We looked at what the key developer projects coming forward are and what might be implied by that. And then I came back for what we've called the consolidation workshop, which was kind of a big friendly chat actually, with some great workshop exercises in it, to really kind of see if the direction of travel seemed to work, to present some ideas around cultural principles, which is something we use on repeated projects, which I'll explain in a minute. And you know, people doing mapping work of this kind, I'll show a couple of examples of where that got to. And then now we're here, and the report's going to come out in December, and then I think, you know, and we're now at the stage of the what next conversation. Some of the data that we've pulled out, kind of simply presented. The report will contain more detailed stuff on this, but some of the key things we look for to really understand how to frame and make work a kind of cultural placemaking approach. What's the percentage of younger residents, particularly 20 to 34 years old? We use a kind of common data tool to find that stuff out. In Springfield, it's 22.2%. Had an interesting conversation at the last workshop about how that plays out demographically, in the sense that a lot of the younger sector of the population is minority ethnic. There's some stuff in here about the diversity. Springfield is a majority minority city. How can we pick up on that and respond to it? 65.6%. I think, you know, with Worcester, it's a case of when does it hit that point, at what stage, and how can we pave the way to actually take account of that and to use it as a powerful lever. The student population, just under 8,900 people here in Springfield. We looked at the kind of heritage parts of it and the percentage of creative residents. Now, inevitably, with the exception of people like John and the work he does, we'll find in a place like this that compared to bigger cities, the percentage of creative residents is quite low at this point. So it's just over 1% here, according to the data that we've turned out. I think the way that we look at it is, okay, so what can we put in place to attract more creative workers? Because creative workers are the fundamental engine to help drive these kind of things forward. They're also, you know, particularly when they are younger, very likely to be actively involved in creating new cultural projects. They're going to be very pushy about what kind of cultural experiences that they can have in a place. And so how do we think about this whole cultural placemaking approach that supports creative workers? And by creative workers, you know, I mean, that's a very wide span. Creative IP, knowledge workers is you know, like clearly a big sector of the working population. I think it's just about this percentage about arts, design, entertainment, sports and media occupations is a kind of sliver of that, but kind of creative and knowledge workers and the means to be a powerful attractor for them is something that we should be looking at. I need some water, actually. Thank you. Fantastic. Thanks. And then the economic power of the cultural district. According to this, we're looking at something like $276 million of annual income, and that's taken from an aggregation of all of the cultural organisations that are based in the cultural district. So we're just looking at a very particular part of the city at this point, and an employment of about, is that just over 5,000 employees? So the way that we play that conversation out in Boston is to say, well, if this was a factory, if this was a new factory coming in and seeking to site itself here, and we were to turn around to the city and say, well, we've already got a factory here with this kind of turnover and this kind of workforce, that's a big deal. The issue is that with the cultural sector, it's often not joined up particularly, or this evidence isn't necessarily collected in a very kind of schematic way. So that idea of how can we all kind of get into the tent together and present a unified front and really demonstrate the economic power of culture here in new ways will really reinforce the argument for taking this approach. What excites me most of all really about working here and in Worcester is that from an outsider's perspective, you can really see what's coming. You know, you can see that something has really shifted in recent years here in terms of developer interest, and that presents a huge opportunity to make this connection right now. And it also puts a bit of urgency behind it, in the sense that if this conversation doesn't go anywhere, that opportunity is missed, then essentially it might not come back again for a long period of, for a long cycle. So that idea of now is the time to really strike while the iron is hot is really palpable to us. Just to summarise some of the key developments, there are of course others, But just in terms of the key ones that we talked about in our workshop last time, the huge catalytic power of the MGM Springfield Casino coming here. It was great to hear at the last workshop about how there's already a dialogue between the casino, and Evan and City Mosaic have been talking to the casino about what could be done to really connect the casino into local culture here, provide opportunities for better public realm engagement, and to make sure that opportunities for artists are somehow built into the design and delivery of that project is a kind of really, really heartening thing. I mean, to be honest, that was a point where I thought, do you really need us to come along and endorse this stuff for you? Because you know, people know how to do this stuff here. I think it's just about taking it to the next level. I learned at the last session about CRRC and the enormous plant that's going to come in and build rail cars here, and workers going over to China from Springfield to understand how to do this work. So there's a big business investment being made there. The work that Scott's been leading on in terms of the redevelopment of Union Station, I think presents a whole set of opportunities for great cultural engagement. You know, when that facility is really operating and got thousands of people going through it every day, how that can really be used as a gateway to a cultural experience in Springfield is a big deal. Silver Brick Lofts, another example. I think, you know, for me, this is as much about what's implied by their decision to renovate a substantial amount of properties around here and turn them into flats that are largely pointed at young professionals, just shows the demographic shift that's coming and the kind of cultural expectation that people are going to have when they come here. Similar situation in Worcester. I don't think actually on the scale of investment that's happening here, but nevertheless they're kind of in a similar dynamic, which is why we'd be really keen to encourage you to think about how to connect Springfield and Worcester and to kind of keep talking as you go on this journey. And then some other stuff which you can't capture in pure data or little gobbets of information, but are kind of clear across both cities from my point of view. So there's a thing about the vacancy levels in downtown, which we haven't got a statistic on, but I think everybody would agree that the downtown area has a serious issue with vacancy, and that the retail picture needs a significant improvement in some way. So a question about how to achieve that. The other thing in both cities that seemed to be quite apparent is that there's a kind of bit of a disconnect between the student experience and the downtown experience that needs to be closed off and addressed more effectively. So here's lots of younger, adventurous, culture-savvy, time-rich people, and there isn't enough of a kind of direct umbilical cord linking them to a downtown experience. There's not enough for that demographic in the downtown area, and just the kind of physical means of getting them down here as well could be a lot better. Both cities don't have, in the downtown area, it exists outside of it, but not enough provision for artist workspaces. So I think we'd like to encourage you to think about how to improve the concentration of artists that are able to operate directly out of downtown and to have studio premises here, whether these are permanent things or whether these are kind of interim projects that a developer might support as a means to get some creative buzz going on downtown and potentially to open up new connections and networks and conversations. But I think that's a kind of an interestingly absent or underrepresented part of the ecology of downtown Springfield. Makerspaces, I listened a bit about Make It Springfield when I was last here, and funnily enough they've got Technocopia in Worcester as well. So makerspaces are full of very motivated, very savvy practitioners who understand the value of getting together for collaborations around the making economy. And I think it's a really encouraging and very contemporary development. I think one of the things that I was very struck by in Springfield is that when I got to my hotel last night, there was a photocopied bit of A4 that said Springfield, City of Firsts, which is what we talked about in the last workshop. And, you know, there's a whole list. It was about, I don't know, 58, 60 different inventions that had come from this place. So to me, it feels really important and kind of obvious to kind of say, so if this is a city of innovation, then how can we plug in what the next generation of innovators are trying to do in places like the makerspaces or the artist studios into that narrative and really own it, rather than just leave people to individually find their way in relation to it and hope that it kind of joins up later on. I think that's a kind of real must-do for this city, because it's a heritage that you've got, and I think it's so much more powerful if you're actively thinking about ways to forward it as part of your place brand. The cultural diversity is big in both cities, which we've talked about. And then issues about social cohesion. So we talked a bit particularly about some statistics that came out in Springfield about young people, and it was a kind of an index of hopelessness, or that's probably completely the wrong way to phrase it, but some data that had come out that talked particularly about younger people not feeling that there are enough life opportunities here, and a sort of sense of a need to really kind of find ways to glue the community of Springfield together and to support and raise aspiration here. There's some great examples that people gave, the Jazz in the Park Festival and so on, that kind of do a great sort of starting point on that journey, and that really kind of reassure me that when as a city you do these things, people come out and they work in kind of production terms and so on. So it's kind of about, well, what's the layer underneath that means that it's not just about these events, but it's kind of strategies to then feed people in or support people to kind of come together in new ways on an ongoing basis and on their own terms. So I've begun to talk about this actually. So the kind of place differentiators to me are, you guys are kind of popping with them, you know. So the Dr. Seuss thing, which is kind of unavoidable, right? As a kind of, you know, the city's famous son, and something that we feel you can do so much with. The kind of from Springfield to the world narrative is something that we really feel you should be embracing. We're very impressed at the amount of kind of large-scale cultural festivals that go on here, particularly the stuff that Spirit of Springfield has supported. This shows that there are people here who are kind of used to kind of really getting stuck into making large-scale events happen, and to kind of make this a place that is really, really eventful. So if the skills and the ability is here and people collaborate to really focus that agenda on the downtown area, I think you could have something really special here. And then the sport credentials are quite palpable. It's great to have somebody from the Basketball Hall of Fame here, and I learned that the American Hockey League have just recently put their HQ here as well. So, it's been a while. Okay, so there's a kind of sport thing as well. So I mean, to be honest, we go into other locations where we do have to kind of cast around to try and find these narratives and these assets, these opportunities. And we're working in East London at the moment, essentially in what is a kind of a sea of mud that's not going to have any buildings on it for the next 15 years on any scale. And trying to make sense of that is a lot harder than making sense of here and what you can do. And the champions are already here. So, you know, to me, this is a question of kind of organisation, networking, clarity of what the structure is, and you know, really just agreeing the terms of the club and the way that you kind of put it together. You know, you're doing public realm art projects. You've got great people in the room together already. You show that you can move fast and make things happen. I think it's just about putting it into a bigger fabric. This is your. For those who haven't seen, I showed this last time, just a Wordle that we made where we took all of the cultural district members, all 44 of them, and took their mission statements and put it into the machine that showed us what the keywords are that really jump out. It's rare for us to see, you know, this is a kind of very quick exercise to do that often is kind of incredibly uninsightful, because you kind of get lots of, you know, prettified words that show that people are doing stuff. When you get a big word like community jump out at that level, it shows that across your cultural district members, that's a really, really big deal. It's really kind of disproportionately recognised. So there's a kind of big thing about that sense of kind of community and community cohesion for us. There's a big thing about the innovation narrative, and there's a big thing about kind of really using the kind of heritage and the Dr. Seuss-ness and so on that I think are key drivers for how you should work. So that's the contrast there. That's Worcester's, which is more kind of recognisable in terms of when we do these things. Some creative maps that we did last time. This is just an example. FutureCity does creative maps all the time. This is just a quick example of something we did in New York a couple of years ago in the Penn District. The idea of making creative maps of places we find is a kind of really powerful tool to redraw the map and present it in ways that really spell out the cultural narrative. So this took the Penn District, because Madison Square Garden is moving and they're redesigning Penn Station. And so essentially this part of Manhattan, which is a part of the city that people don't really want to spend much time in, up until this point, is kind of opening up to new possibilities. And our whole approach was to say, well, let's plot where the creative and cultural industries are, and to think about how to use culture actively as a tool to animate these east-west streets in West Manhattan, which doesn't sort of naturally happen. There's a few, but most of the kind of cultural identity of the streets in Manhattan is the big kind of north-south arteries, the Avenue of the Arts, the Avenue of the Americas, and so on. But sort of this is a kind of really simple, really clear way to sort of just say, so what if West 34th is the street of dance? Let's just decide that and see what comes out of that decision. What if West 38th is the street of, I don't know, pop-up retail or similar? You know, you can pick these themes and you can begin to play with it in ways that allow everybody agency to contribute something. We made a couple in these workshops. I'm just showing one from each. So this is following on the kind of Dr. Seuss thing, the catwalk, which was an idea that Evan spoke to us about last time we were here. So essentially, all of the maps in Springfield said rivers at the bottom, and that's the gateway. And Memorial Bridge is the way you look in. And that idea of how can we think creatively about the wayfinding offer of downtown Springfield. So correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have got applied wayfinding working with you on a kind of citywide. Is that right? That's right, isn't it? So to me, I look at that kind of conversation, I think that's great. Proper, legible, clear, helpful wayfinding in the downtown area. Where's culture in that moment? How could culture be a kind of catalyst to really help support or reinforce or get some of these meanings or messages out? And who from the commercial sector might be interested in supporting that? Is there a project around there that could be developed pretty quickly to really kind of enrich and kind of make unique this whole kind of wayfinding idea? This catwalk idea was essentially thinking about how to link the river and the green spaces and Union Station and different cultural premises around the downtown area to give a kind of playful, intriguing, kind of maverick walk experience, which the doing of it opens up some of the streets in the downtown area, allows visitors and residents to kind of actually discover places that they wouldn't otherwise, but also they don't have to be in a building to have a cultural experience in downtown Springfield. The downtown says the whole thing is a cultural experience, and this is one of the ways that it can be demonstrated. This one might pertain a bit, actually. This is one of the ones from Worcester where they looked at their downtown, which doesn't have a beautiful river next to it, but has several kind of powerful cultural engines around the edge. In this case, to do with the cultural district being located outside of downtown and a big food offer. So that idea of how can we draw in these different energies that are around the downtown and use it to fuel up and provide new energy through partnership. Cultural principles, very quickly. So what we find is that if you don't have a set of kind of clear sort of boxes on the table that have a name on the side and that say, okay, every idea in terms of commercial decisions, architectural decisions, landscaping, community, partnership, retail, if we can put all of these things into a set of boxes that have a clear set of themes on them and that everybody's aware of them, then the public and visitors and investors will come to Springfield and be able to see a kind of clear narrative that's unique to this place where everybody's able to make a contribution. So we've developed them in draft form in this demonstrator project for both of the cities. These are the ones that we've got for you guys, which are pretty much as per last month. I know that the group that I met last month also did some further work on developing them. But essentially, these to me were a kind of the big hitting ideas. And I think it's important, and I know that people who are working in the culture sector often kind of find this quite challenging because there's a big concern to try and be super inclusive and to respond to a million different cultural interests and needs that people have. In terms of the kind of placemaking agenda, we find that having really big, clear, powerful ideas, particularly ones that developers can kind of get hold of and understand and find ways to to relate to and think about how to enhance their schemes through adopting these principles is the way forward. So this idea of unlocking the river, you've got the Connecticut River, which is a kind of huge asset a huge natural asset running right next to the downtown, and you're cut off from it. And everybody's aware of it, and everybody says, well, there's not a lot we can do about it. Scott's leading some great work about, developing the green offer next to the river. To me, unlike Worcester, Springfield kind of has a kind of hero shot. Where is the place in the city that if the city had a website, what would its cover image be? And to me, it's standing next to the river, looking through the I-91 into the downtown area. That is the kind of, to me, the quintessential place. So the idea of really doing something to unlock the river and make it a cultural space in ways that isn't at the moment, I think should be a kind of key driver for you. This idea of playful public realm is about saying, well, it's the kind of idea of, it's the Dr. Seuss thing a bit. It's about saying, okay, so as public realm improvements are going on, how can we think about those creatively and playfully? How can we use them as a means not to just make sure that there's great street furniture or pavement widening or so on going on, but each time that happens, an opportunity to reflect the heritage or to platform the culture here can be taken. In our experience as a company, this doesn't cost people necessarily more money. It could be taking an existing landscaping budget or an existing budget for exterior architecture and doing something playful and different with it. That's a kind of that makes a major contribution to the public realm. Creative wayfinding, I think I've just talked about in terms of the applied wayfinding project. What we've called chemistry here, I think, is something that's very important for you about this downtown vacancy issue. We think it's really important that you consider a way to support a set of spaces in the downtown that can be subsidized somehow to support creative activity. Be that artist workspaces, be that small-scale businesses, be that supporting initiatives like Make It Springfield to be more successful. But essentially, people are, you're going to have a lot of people coming into the casino and the new developments here. What else is there going to be around them? And I think everybody's, very, very conscious of that issue. So what is the solution? If we were to identify a set of spaces across the city and think about, permitted development rights to allow those to become more creatively activated, then you begin to get the content that can support the catwalk or what the other idea for the map is. And it also means that whenever the big cultural institutions are in the room that are doing a big program or a big festival, or when you're doing the parade of the big balloons or similar, these spaces could be curated against that theme. So it stops being a moment where it's kind of, okay, let's do culture for the day, and that's great, but then the next day things go back to normal. Let's instead think about how we can have a persistent set of spaces that are flexible enough that take that energy and bake it into the downtown. Seussification, I'm still not sure if that's an allowable word. People were very tolerant last time. Seussness or similar. To be fair, somebody did come up to me during the workshop. Fortunately, I can't remember who, but they did sort of say, Tim, I need to tell you quietly, it's not all about Dr. Seuss, okay? There's other things going on here, and we don't want Seuss to take over everything. Completely get that, completely understand that. At the same time, you cannot ignore the fact that you've got a global superstar in terms of children's publishing here that is iconic, well-known, and uber creative. And I think the idea of how you can really think about what Seussness is about and connect it to other things and use it at that kind of super top level for what the Springfield brand is about is pretty key to the way forward. Young people skills and training is, I think, picking up on that point about social cohesion and aspirations around young people. Are the cultural organisations that run the great youth programmes that you do, are the youth programmes joined up? Do they speak to each other? What are the opportunities for new spaces for young people? What are the opportunities perhaps within the development sector to support young people to do stuff, through apprenticeships or mentoring or similar? I think it's essentially when we had these conversations, it felt like there's a really stuck issue around this, that this group of people could be in a position to do something really good about. And then mixing cultures. So majority minority city, that should be part of the DNA of the cultural offer here. How can it be achieved? I'm not going to go through Worcester as exhaustively as possible, but just to point out a couple of points. So the top one's essentially about taking these energies out of the downtown and pulling them in. Activating the public realm, a bit like the playful public realm here. Creative Springboard, they have loads of students in Worcester entirely cut off from the downtown experience, and they need to get onto that. And they have an organisation called MassDigi, the Massachusetts Digital Games Institute over there, which is the US's premier kind of video and digital game development facility. And so that's all about, well, if you've got that, how can you pull it into the public realm? How can you make interactive and playful experiences that reflect that reality? So, and then projects. So I'm just going to kind of touch on three. This is where I begin to shut up, fortunately. The projects that I want to show here, I've just kind of picked three. I think I presented 7 or 8 very quickly at the last workshop last month, but just to show how this kind of framework can move from those idea of cultural principles into sort of direct projects. And these are not so much recommendations. They're things that in my little kind of consultant bubble I got super excited about. But you know what the projects are. You're already starting some of the projects. I think it's about saying, what are the quick wins? What are the most powerful things we can do? What stands in the way of them? So 3 for Springfield, there's 3 for Worcester. And the first one is the underpass. This is, I don't know if people are familiar with this project. This is a project called Undergardener in Toronto. So they have, if you look at Toronto on a map, it's, I think the scale's slightly different, but the kind of position of, here's an amazing body of water, here's the neighborhoods of the city, here's a big piece of physical infrastructure that severs the two. And what are we going to do about it? In Toronto, they've essentially, I think it's like a 7-acre stretch, so it's more room than you guys may have. But essentially, they've created an initiative to join up all of the space under the underpass and to invite ideas from the public about how to infect it with life, how to put creative businesses in there, how to use it as an event space, how to use it for great public realm. They've just done a big naming initiative, and I think it's now called the Bentway, and that's come directly from the public. This is a big deal in downtown Toronto, and as the ambition of this image shows. So this idea of, you've got this underpass, it's got these spaces underneath. Evan was talking to me last time about, I'd love to find ways to put some great installation in there so things can happen. Scott was pointing directly at a space underneath it and saying, what could we put there? To me, this is a great thing to embark on and to think about how to do as quickly as possible, because it will signal the connection between downtown and the river. And it would also be kind of cool and edgy and interesting in ways that will add stuff to your cultural mix. This one here is just an idea that occurred to me about the culture mixing project. So this is one that I was actually involved in Chicago back in 2012, where essentially we invited the different communities of Chicago to bring food to the table. I understand from Morgan that Spirit of Springfield has done something like this called Taste of Springfield in the past. This was specifically a means to kind of develop a platforms for super inclusive, cross-cultural community mixing, and to understand what people's hopes and fears were for the future of the neighborhoods they were in. And we then used that as a platform to train artists to go and make amazing projects off the back of it. We established this in 1 year, and the Potluck Festival continues, and new artists to join it all the time. I think in our experience, the kind of world of property development really struggles to know what to do with multiculturalism. They can recognise it's there, but the kind of business models aren't based on responding to it in a kind of very direct way. But I think if there's a way to think about how to develop something that supports inclusive cross-community development, that point I was making earlier about what's the layer underneath the sort of jazz festival and so on. You know, something along these lines. Food is a very powerful kind of catalyst, and you know, everybody has content in terms of across cultures in terms of what they put on the table every night. So something like that. And then the third one is, forgive me, the Sue's Takeover. So this is about. So this image is from a recent project that happened in Cardiff in Wales that I talked about last month briefly, which happened over a weekend. Cardiff is the birthplace of Roald Dahl. So here's a giant peach rolling down the street. On the same weekend, you would go to, there would be Fantastic Mr. Fox parading through the streets. There was an amazing kind of picnic that happened on a hillside overlooking the city where all the families with under fives in them could kind of eat food made out of different kind of word shapes. You know, it went on and on and on. My best friend was the director of participation for this project. And they anticipated an audience footprint of 50,000 people on the first day of it, and they got double that, which was kind of scary if you're in charge of health and safety. But it also, it's worth looking up this project actually online if you'd like some inspiration about it. It's called City of the Unexpected, if you Google that. Essentially, the things that really convince me of the power of this approach is when you look at some of the videos, particularly of younger people, of people who might be 8 or 9 years old, who've come out on a day like this and seen something that is just remarkable for a city to do, and that they just didn't think that sensible grown-up people would ever stage for them. And they say the most astonishing and heartfelt things. You know, to me, this is like the front line of cultural inclusion, effectively, where people are not necessarily thinking, oh, I need to kind of, before I go into a gallery, I need to do lots of learning about art, history, and understand what it is. No, there's a giant peach rolling down the street because Roald Dahl was born here, and we want to celebrate that. So to me, it's like, what's your version of that? You know, the people who produce these kinds of events describe themselves as people whose primary skill is about making friends with people. There's an example. I'm just going to skip forward. I'll come back to these. Yeah, so this is another version. People might be familiar with this image. This is a company called Royal Deluxe, French company, who came to London with this project called the Sultan's Elephant back in 2010 or there's about. And they for those who visited London, you just think how unimaginable it is to shut off the middle of the city, given how busy it is. And Helen Marriage, the producer on this project, managed it by taking the chief of police from London to France to see a version of this work, so that he would then cry with emotion and appreciation and come back and tell all of his colleagues in the police that it needed to happen. So, you know, I think, you know, there are ways to shoot for the moon here if you're really, really gutsy. And London doesn't have a connection with elephants particularly, or, you know, or sort of, you know, there was a rocket that landed in a circus thing and a girl and so on. You know, it was kind of an abstract thing. This thing in Cardiff is plugged into Roald Dahl in the way that you're plugged into Dr. Seuss, right? So in my world, you haven't got an excuse not to do it, really. And then just kind of a couple of spaces, really, just to make these things real. So here's this space, or one of the spaces. I don't know if there's several, Scott, but this is I think this is the one that we looked at, just taken out of Street View. You know, this is, what's the dimensions? What's the square meterage of this space here? Roughly? It's big, right? It's big. It's pretty big, and you can do a lot of things with it. And so then as you go to the right, you know, here's your river. You know, to me, the kind of front door of Springfield. Here's the thing that links it to the downtown. What can happen there? What do we want to make happen here? Could this be a kind of, you know, an independent retail? Could it be a pop-up village? Could it be the arts installation that Evan was talking about? You know, could it be all of those things? Could it be a temporary or a permanent space? Could it be a way to platform the most exciting things that the cultural institutions that are in the room are doing? What are the acoustics like? You know, could we do the amazing music performances, the community music stuff that you do in here? What needs to happen to that space to adapt it acoustically, so that it becomes the go-to place to find the really quirky stuff, perhaps, that people are doing? What could John do in it with his students? And then this, Street View, and you guys need to solve this. Street View won't let you down to the river. So I think if you adopt this approach, it will do. So this is the best shot I could get off Street View of that. But this to me is the kind of gateway, the Connecticut River, that difficult power station across the other side of it, where one of our recommendations was about, well, how could that be treated? How could that be made not an ugly building, but something that becomes in the hero shot? Could we treat it with lighting? Could we do facade design? We had a bit of a conversation about how some of the new developments coming in are going to have rooms that overlook that building. So could that be treated to generate a unified picture for what the Riverside experience is like? Worcester ones, you don't need to worry about Worcester ones. But I'll just dwell on them briefly because there might be some crossover. There's an issue to do with downtown safety in Worcester. So just thinking about, well, if lighting's going to go in, as new lighting projects come in, how can we culturalize them? This is a shot of and given the gaming thing there, I thought it was good to put in the shot of this water fountain that you can play old arcade games on after 7 o'clock at night. So that idea of, you link up and you bake in different elements of what your cultural identity is. And then another thing about this gaming idea of they run a project out of the library every summer that teenagers and young people get together and make new video games. Let's beef it up. Let's get more people out of the library. Let's make it more inclusive. How could downtown Worcester be a place of play and gaming? Images of Worcester that I'm going to be talking to them about later today.
With us this morning is Scott Hansen. He's the principal planner in the city of Springfield, and he's been a key actor in this study that's been going on for the last 4 months. Scott, we've sat through a number of presentations, and there's some excellent ideas. What's your feeling about the chances of implementing these ideas?
I think the timing for future cities being here in the city is perfect. We just highlighted last week that we have over $3 billion of recently completed, planned, and in progress economic development initiatives happening. So when we look at all of that activity and then try to marry it with our existing arts and cultural institutions, now is the time to really elevate that conversation. How can these two sectors that are really doing significant good for the city, particularly downtown, come together in a more meaningful way?
Now, one of the things we've heard today and in the last 2 sessions was the leadership from the business community might not be as strong as it was in the past because people are busy, the economy is generally down, and they're focusing on building their own businesses. This might mean that there's a bigger role for the city to play. Do you feel that there's a commitment from the part of the mayor to continue this type of activity, planning and then implementing these ideas?
I think the mayor is 100% on board with this. He is very energized by these types of meetings and these initiatives, and the other more creative things that are happening downtown, like a new wayfinding system is being designed. We're looking at adding bike share to downtown. So he is very much about how do we kind of take the bricks and mortar type projects and then layer on these extra amenities that really add value for downtown residents, for visitors, and for workers.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Morgan Druniani, who is the Executive Director of the Springfield Central Cultural District, a relatively new addition to the Springfield's cultural stage. Morgan, can you tell us a little bit about what the Cultural District is doing and what you have been doing?
Sure. So the Springfield Central Cultural District is a Massachusetts Cultural Council designated district. It's one of 35 in the state, and we have 52 member organizations right now that range from as large as the Basketball Hall of Fame and the museums, all the way down to the Bangor Arts Center, which is a small community venue up in the X near Forest Park. So that I think those examples kind of give the breadth of the kind of members we have represented, not just in the Metro Center where the district is, but outside of that. And what we do is try to facilitate conversations and collaboration between these cultural folks in the city. So they're working more together, as well as banding together to have one cohesive message about why arts and culture are important within Springfield.
Excellent. Morgan, you've been on the job now about a year and a half, over 2 years. And it was clear that from the discussion we had today with the folks in the audience who are all involved with business in the city or cultural events in the city or city government and planning, that one of the more outstanding projects that we've had in terms of arts and culture over the last year is the utility box project, and that's one of your creations. Could you explain that to us a little bit?
It is. So back in September of 2015, we did a community movie night in Stern Square Park, and as part of that, we did some what they call placemaking, which is essentially a fancy term saying we're doing something cool out in the public realm to make people feel ownership of their space. And one of the things that we did for placemaking was a pilot project of 2 painted utility boxes. And folks loved those so much. They came back, they said, these are beautiful, these are great, where'd you get this idea? Can we do more of them? So I kind of looked around to see if there are other examples. There's a project in Boston called Paint Box, where City Hall commissions artists for $200 to $300 a mural per utility box to go out and decorate their neighborhoods. So I was able to facilitate, through partnerships with businesses and artists, the painting of 23 utility boxes throughout the cultural district by young artists, by local artists, by artists of color, and especially women, to kind of start that conversation of what art looks like on the streetscape and what the meaning of that actually is.
The boxes are beautiful. One of the things that strikes people the most is, in our earlier conversation, you told me that it was not a very expensive project. And so does this bode well for the future and serve as an example of what you can do with some creativity and a limited budget?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, we basically partnered businesses and artists. I went around to our local businesses saying, hey, Tower Square, there's a blank utility box out right in front of your building. What if that was covered in sunflowers? What would that mean to your tenants? And is that worth $300 to your bottom line? And because we're a nonprofit and have support from the cultural community, we were able to kind of underwrite the facilitation of the program and keep the overhead low so the artists could get all of that funding to pay for supplies and to pay for their time.
Excellent. So creativity, not only from the visionary sense, but also how do you pay for it sense.
Absolutely.
Is more important in some days than anything else. So what's next on your agenda?
That's a good question. So we did a pilot project in October, some pop-up galleries called Art Stop, and we put 3 art galleries in 3 unexpected places downtown, basically just underutilized meeting spaces, public spaces, places that people walk through all the time and they don't take note of, much like the utility boxes, and kind of said, what if we put art in here? What if we gave artists the opportunity to sell their art in these spaces and make people feel more welcome and engaged by their spaces? So we did the pilot in October, and we're looking to replicate it probably again in March or April.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Maureen. Good luck with these projects that are helping to enhance the life of the folks that live, work, and visit Springfield.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our guest right now is Evan Plotkin. Evan is one of the leading real estate owners and investors in the city of Springfield. He is also a leader in developing the arts and culture scene in the city. Evan's probably most well-known project is bringing their Jazz Roots Festival to Court Square. Very successful, bringing thousands of people into downtown to enjoy the city, enjoy the culture that we have here. And but from what I understand it, Evan, that's not the end of the projects that you've engaged yourself in terms of art and culture.
Right. Well, I think that there's a fabric or a mosaic that we've tried to create. And of course, the nonprofit that I started called City Mosaic is their role is to try to activate buildings, activate public space, and to bring people back downtown to enjoy these great spaces and to start to have a feeling of community. And I think music and art and all of these other things, these public art projects, have an ability to make people feel confident again in their city. And the results of that, at least as far as this building, 1350 Main Street, is concerned, has been huge. I think that the activating of our plaza and to create art space in our lobby and to do events, musical events and so forth, have made people feel very comfortable being here. They want to, they enjoy having this as their place of work. I think that the takeaway from that is that businesses that are looking to locate somewhere, they have choices. Springfield is famous for having the best logistics. In other words, we're close to the Hartford market, we're close to the Amherst market, we're right on the Knowledge Corridor. We can draw in a tremendous amount of talent from two different directions, and we're right in the middle, at the crossroads of New England. That is such an amenity that to leverage that amenity is you need to make the actual place, Springfield, more hospitable to young people to want to live. Once you can attract those young folks who are graduating from the colleges and universities along the Knowledge Corridor, they're going to other cities to find work, and they don't look at Springfield as a viable place to live or a fun place to live, then we're losing that workforce. So a lot of the things that I've been talking about doing with jazz festivals, with public art, with creating an ambiance and an energy in the downtown is to really have those individuals think twice about leaving the downtown. If they can stay downtown and want to live downtown and work downtown, site selectors will look a lot harder at Springfield, which will create jobs and economic opportunity.
Now, are there specific projects underway that you are designed to make this a better place that you're working on right now that will attract younger people as to want to come here and live and work?
Sure. Well, I'm indirectly involved with a lot of the development work that's happening in Stern Square, which is a beautiful park that is surrounded by retail, office, and residential properties. The square was originally designed over 100 years ago to be a place for people to recreate, to gather. It's like any park. Over the years, in the last 20 or more years, this park has not been well maintained. It's been in decline. And so now there's an effort to restore that park and create a nice environment for people to be in. I think that just adds another amenity to downtown, particularly when you have the Silver Brick Lofts, which are 260 apartment units being converted to market rate just a block away. Mm-hmm. Those individuals, those residents are now have a safe, clean, beautiful environment to walk their dog, to hang out, to recreate. Later on, I know that there'll be more programming in that park for music, for different food truck types of festivals, and I think that the development of a restaurant concentration in that park will further develop that area. So I've been behind that movement of creating and accessing Stern Square. I've also been looking at Pynchon Plaza as a very strategic connector from the quadrangle to the downtown. And again, that is all about trying to create a more walkable, more friendly pedestrian environment in the city. The quadrangle is arguably one of the greatest cultural venues that we have. Right at the base of that is another amazing cultural venue, which is the Mass Mutual Center. But they're not joined because you can't get from one place to another. You also have a parking garage, which would lend itself to the public having a convenient place to park to visit the quadrangle. So it's all right there for us. All we need to do is create a connector. There's some little bit of money involved, but I've been pushing to have that park elevator and walk path be restored. bringing back this beautiful fountain, which is a beautiful fountain and reflecting pool there, which would be an attraction all by itself.
Right.
Never mind it being a connector from downtown to the quad. It's also a place where you might want to just sit and relax in the summer with the waterfall. So those two initiatives, Stern Square, Pynchon Park, and the riverfront are, I would say, the three connecting priorities that create walkability, enhance the public experience downtown and the pedestrian experience downtown, creating walk paths and bike paths, and doing these things artistically with wayfinding is all leads to that whole experience of what it is to be someone in the urban downtown center.
One last note, Evan. We've been sat through 4 sessions, I believe, with Future Cities, which is an internationally known consultant on activating public spaces. Fortunately, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts brought them on board, and they've done Boston and Worcester and Springfield. A ton of good ideas have come out of these sessions. Are you encouraged that we'll be able to maintain some momentum?
Yes, I think as long as we keep the conversation alive and we have individuals who are recognized on the world stage, and they've worked all over the world and have had very good success in other cities, that we need to acknowledge that while their ideas may not be entirely original for Springfield, I think we've had the recipe all along. It's just confirmation, and that we need to be committed to these initiatives, and that gives us validation that we're on the right track.
Great. Thank you very much for the podcast.
You're welcome.